Hi, 8th grade, it's Miss Dodd. Today I'm filming in my classroom because yesterday Jaquarius told me that there was a ghost in my last video of the crash course of the founding of New Orleans. So I'm not really sure what happened there, but there was apparently like a ghost in the back. So to prevent that, I'm just going to be in the Yale classroom filming. Okay, today we're going to be talking about something we've already discussed twice, so this should be review for you. You should be getting 100% on these easy educating questions. So we're going to be talking today again about the Acadian arrival. The Acadians were another group that came to New Orleans. And in the second half of this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the Germans, who should have been covered in your homework if you did it. Okay. So who were the Acadians? Where were they? Well, they were French peasants and farmers that lived in Canada, in Nova Scotia. This area in red here is where the Acadians lived. They settled there in Canada in the 1500s. I'll show you another large picture here. This is where the Acadians were on the Atlantic Ocean. They had come all the way over from France, settled in Acadia, and then started to be peaceful farmers that lived there. But remember, during the French and Indian War, so that was in the mid-1700s, there was all this conflict happening between Britain and France. So Britain would be this yellow part here, and then France is this kind of salmon orange looking color. And then the First Nations here, that's what was the Native American. So all this conflict, Acadia, as you can see, is kind of separated where the Acadians were living. And the British did not like the fact that the Acadians were there right next to the French, and they kind of questioned whether the Acadians would actually be loyal to them because the Acadians, remember, were French speaking, and the British were very suspicious. So they decided to kick the Acadians out of their homeland and made them move. This is called in French le grand dérangement. This is what it says, le grand dérangement. It happened in 1755, and this means the Great Exile. So I'll put the translation here for you. I know the kids in Yale make fun of me for the pronunciation, but that's really how you say it. Le grand dérangement. You can practice that. All right, so the Acadians, they were forced out of their homes. They were pushed out very violently, and the British were actually really rude towards them and even killed them if they didn't want to leave. Imagine having someone come and knock on your door and saying, hey, we don't think that you're going to be loyal to us, so you need to go. So that's what the British did to the Acadians. So they made them move back to France. They had to leave their homeland, everything they had ever known for 100 years, and move all the way back to France or into the eastern United States, or some of them came all the way down to Louisiana. Here is an image. In the red, you can see the British soldiers, and then these were all the peasants, Acadians in Canada, being forced onto these boats and then onto ships to be pushed all over the world in Le Grand Dérangement. As you can tell, I just said push, so you know that this is a huge push factor because the British are pushing the Acadians out. So this is an example of what we would call an ethnic cleansing. The definition of an ethnic cleansing is the mass expulsion or killing of members of an unwanted ethnic or religious group in a society. So the British did not want the Acadians, the French-speaking Acadians there. They made them leave, the mass expulsion of the Acadians. Some other examples of ethnic cleansing, obviously this is a really bad thing, was the Holocaust in World War II, where the Nazis ethnically cleansed or killed off the Jews. There was also a genocide in Rwanda in the 50s that caused the killing of a lot of people as well. So ethnic cleansing is something really, really bad, and it's important to keep in mind that the Acadians suffered greatly. So where did they go? Why are the Acadians relevant to us? They moved to Louisiana. This is actually the Acadian flag. Maybe some of you have seen it. I've seen it out on Esplanade. People fly it sometimes because maybe they're Cajuns. But they moved to Louisiana because they knew it was a French-speaking colony. Remember, Bienville had established it in 1718. So about 30 years later, the Acadians knew the French people were here, so they decided to move to Louisiana. And they were farmers, so they knew that there was lots of open land for farming. They settled in this huge green area. This is called Acadiana, or Cajun country. Remember, Cajun comes from Acadian, and that just kind of came out of the language. So they settled in southern Louisiana where they started to farm. And if you go back and look here, these were two pull factors for Louisiana. So the Acadians were pulled to Louisiana because of the French and because of farming. All right. When the Acadians got here, they obviously encountered a lot of different cultures and then started to spread their own culture. So there was a lot of cultural diffusion happening. I've listed some examples. My personal favorite, because I love Cajun food, is the food. So if you've ever been to a crawfish boil, thank the Cajuns and the Acadians. Here's another famous Cajun, Paul Prudhomme, who was a big man who obviously really loves to eat a lot, but all of this is Cajun style food. The boudin sausage and the oysters, the way they prepare the crawfish boil, all of that's Cajun. So that's a good example of cultural diffusion. Earlier this year, I think we listened to an example of that Zydeco music that's played with the fiddle. Okay. So the Acadians, that's our first group we're talking about today. Our final group is the Germans. So lots of people don't know this, but there were many Germans that also settled in Louisiana alongside the French. So they came over to Louisiana in 1721. Remember, they were lured over by that propaganda from John Law, who said, hey, come over here. There's riches over here. So he got some Germans to come over, and they became landowners. So this is their contribution. Despite periodic flooding, hurricanes, and the rigors of frontier life, the German pioneers made a success of their settlements. Their farming endeavors provided food not only for themselves, but also for New Orleans residents. So, and some historians even credit Germans with the survival of early New Orleans. So if it wasn't for the Germans, perhaps New Orleans wouldn't have existed today. So the Germans were a very important group that came over to farm. And I have a map here. This gold, or this sort of like darker color that I'm pointing to right now, that's where the Acadians were settling in Cajun country. And this bright gold yellow color here, that's called the German coast on the west side of Lake Pontchartrain right here. That is where the Germans settled. And today that is modern, that this part where my arrow is pointing, that's going to be the eastern edge of Metairie. So that's where the Germans did settle. They brought, again, their culture, and just like the Acadians, they engaged in cultural diffusion. One of the coolest things that I think they brought over was the accordion. And that became a key instrument that was played in Zydeco music. So if you look at this map, the German coast is right next to Acadiana, so the two cultures were able to mingle and interact. And not only did the Acadians bring their culture, but the Germans did as well. And there was that diffusion. The two cultures combined to form Zydeco music, which is a unique form of music that is known all around the world. Plus, who doesn't love a picture of a guy playing the accordion? Or this dude. All right, hope you enjoyed the video and learned a little more about Acadians and Germans. Have a great day, and always, always, always love social studies.